And we are back. Excuse me for the sad music in the background. It's a sad time in New York. But we are back here on the show and we might as well make it do what it do. And the next topic that we have here on today's show is regarding the AFC South. Excuse me, the NFC South. As we all know, the NFC South was looked upon as one of the worst divisions in football. A lot of people thought that maybe this is the worst division in football. Dude, 2 weeks, clearly not. So the question that we have presented at the bottom ticker is, are any of the 3-2-0 NFC South teams for real? And Zach, once again, you can kick us off.
Yeah, so I think it's super interesting, right? Like, I think the consensus opinion was, yes, this is the worst division in football. And the Saints were really considered the consensus favorite. Like, I feel like there weren't a lot of people picking anyone outside of them to win it. And I think we're seeing, like, no matter how you feel about the Saints, we're seeing that this division is going to be very competitive throughout the season. And I think it's going to come down to the wire the last few weeks of the season. I've been very impressed with both Atlanta and Tampa Bay. I'm not going to lie. I think the Falcons, it's so interesting. Like, I understand Arthur Smith gets a lot of heat because, you know, people draft Kyle Pitts and Drake London in their fantasy leagues, and they're not really seeing the production they were expecting. But I think in a league that is so focused on passing, the Falcons are a very entertaining watch for me. Like, the fact that they play this brand of positionless football and they just have three different guys who could run the ball down your throat at any time, I think it's super fun to watch. And I like this team a lot. I'm rooting for them to do well. And I think when it comes to their victory on Sunday over the Green Bay Packers, you know, they were down 12 points. So that really made them have Desmond Ridder throw the ball a little bit. And I'm not saying that Desmond Ridder is some great quarterback, right? But he does remind me of a poor man's Ryan Tannehill. And that's the guy that Arthur Smith was able to win games with in Tennessee. And the Falcons on Sunday, in the fourth quarter, they're down by 12 points. Ridder runs for a touchdown on 4th and 4 to cut the game to 7 or to 6, I should say. And I love the aggressiveness that Arthur Smith coached with on that final drive. If you missed the game, there was about like 2:30 to go. They're marching towards field goal range, and they have a 4th and 1. And they could have either went for the field goal and taken the lead with about 2 minutes left, and maybe that would have given Green Bay a chance to come back and Jordan Love to win the game. But he went for it on 4th and 1, and he pitched it to Bijan Robinson a couple yards behind the line of scrimmage. But Bijan Robinson is one of the best running backs in the game. And the thing I love about Atlanta is that they already have so much confidence in him. I understand that it's not really the popular opinion to have right now, drafting a running back with that high of a pick, especially when the Falcons over the course of the last few years have really struggled on the defensive side of the ball. But Bijan picked up that first down. I think he's electric, already one of the most fun players in the league to watch. And because of Arthur Smith's aggressive coaching, that's a huge win for Atlanta, and they were able to win that game. And I know it's early. It's only Tuesday, but looking ahead to the Week 3 schedule, Falcons at Lions is a game I already have circled on my calendar. I can't wait for that one. I think we could be seeing a lot of points scored in that one. When it comes to Tampa Bay, I'm very impressed with Baker Mayfield. I mean, he has been statistically one of the better quarterbacks in the league to start off this season. And I do think the difference going from Byron Leftwich to Dave Canales is already a move at offensive coordinator that is making a huge impact for this team. We know when it comes to the Buccaneers, they still have a few core group of players from the past few years that made deep playoff runs, including a Super Bowl victory. And Baker Mayfield already has that chemistry with Mike Evans. It's extremely noticeable to me. Chris Godwin's gotten off to a great start. Rachaad White had a big game on Sunday against the Chicago Bears. The defense, Shaq Barrett, what a play on that pick six of Justin Fields to really ice that game for Tampa Bay. And it's funny because we've spoken a lot about it. Like the Buccaneers, they really felt like a toxic team last year. And there were a ton of things that were going wrong in that locker room. And to me, so far this season, it feels like the opposite. It seems like Todd Bowles, he's had those guys ready to play to start off each of their first 2 games. They want to win badly. And I know that the narrative was, oh, Baker Mayfield, he's some stopgap quarterback and this team could be tanking and just put in Kyle Trask anytime they want. After the first 2 games, this is a team that looks extremely motivated to me. And I think they're going to be very competitive throughout the season. Again, I'm really looking forward to their Week 3 game coming up on Monday Night Football against the Philadelphia Eagles. When it comes to the Saints, I mean, they're 2-0, so you got to give them credit for that. Never easy to win a road divisional game. Derek Carr has not impressed me at all. we'll see if he could be able to change that. But their defense has played really well. Their defense has rose to the occasion. And I still don't have a ton of confidence in their head coach quarterback combo, but there are 3-2-0 teams in this division, which I don't think anyone was expecting heading into the season.
Yeah, I think for me, I am not buying any three of these 2-0 NFC South teams. I don't think they're for real. None of them. Now, it comes down and it boils down to how I interpret this question. When you talk about for real, I'm thinking you're going to win this division. Now, clearly, somebody has to win this division. But even further, you have to win a playoff game. I don't see any of these three teams winning a playoff game, with all due respect. Now, when we talk about who potentially can win this division and bring it down a notch, then, we could do the process of elimination like you did. So, for example, with the Falcons, or let's start with the Buccaneers, right? I think for me, when you talk about these two things, I think they matter. And they matter more than what people give credit for. And that is, number one, the eye test and the strength of schedule. I definitely value both of those things 50-50 when I judge a team. Now, with the Buccaneers, from the eye test, you did allude to it, with the hiring of Dave Canales over Brian Leftwich. It's more modernization over there compared to Brian Leftwich, who had this outdated Bruce Arians, book of Bruce Arians, throw the ball, win your one-on-one, down the field. It was expiring. And you can see that, the new offense that they had where they tried to establish the running game and pass into the running backs and play off of that is actually helping this team be more methodical moving down the field. And it's helping Baker Mayfield out tremendously, right? That's the eye test from their perspective. But from the teams that they've been playing, you talk about the Vikings, you talk about the Bears. These are two teams that really lack in the trenches. They have no trenches game. Both of those teams, their offensive line stinks, and equally, their defensive line stinks. And we all know the famous saying, you win the game in the trenches. And clearly, Justin Fields is another can of worms, which we potentially could talk about later. So for me, with the Buccaneers, the strength of schedule, they'll have their opportunity next Monday for me or for them to make a statement. And that is playing the Philadelphia Eagles, who won the NFC last year. So that's their opportunity to make a statement. So I'm canceling them out.
Before you move on, let me just ask you one thing. Wasn't Tampa Bay supposed to be in that same category, though? That's why I'm impressed, because I feel like going into the season, the Buccaneers were supposed to be in that same group as like the Vikings and the Bears, among one of the worst teams in the league. And clearly they're not. And that's what stood out to me.
Well, those games went down to the wire. So they probably could still be right there. They just won those games by, a field goal or, literally. Justin Fields really gave that game away if you want to be technical. And Kirk Cousins threw a pick six in the red zone. They only won that game by like 3 points. That cost them the game. So I think a lot of it has to do with how bad these other two teams are and how they are giving this game away, or the games that they play against the Buccaneers away to the Buccaneers. Now, it is a good sight that the Buccaneers are not making those mistakes to give away the game. So that's a start. But once again, next week is a big opportunity to make a statement any further. And with the Falcons, right, I think for me, there is the same thing. As far as how they look on the field, they're able to go down the field with their running game. They put a lot of pieces around Desmond Ridder, and it starts with B. John Robinson. That's where this offense runs through him and Tyler Algier. And they're able to, make plays like that and run their style of offense, which is zagging while the league is zigging. And that's cool. It works out for them. And I think for me, you win games not based on plays. You win games based off matchups. And they do have those guys on this roster that can win their one-on-one matchups. So that's why this team is slightly more legitimate to me than the Buccaneers are, because they can win their one-on-one matchups. I like the pieces that they have on the chessboard where they can win their one-on-ones. Now, it just boils down to Desmond Ridder. I think their defense deserves to be credited here on this show. They're playing a little bit more better compared to the last couple years. So that's good. That's why I actually would be more, how can I say it, optimistic about them compared to the Buccaneers. But once again, it boils down to quarterback. When you have those close games, is he able to string together games like he did against the Packers? We'll see. Now, with the Saints, I think they should be, as I called them before, the favorites to win this division. I don't think I've seen nothing to back that off. They're 2-0. It's not pretty, but they're all 2-0. Derek Carr, yesterday he did throw a bad interception. He hasn't really looked great for the Saints, but he doesn't need to so far, that is. And they should be getting Alvin Kamara back in a couple of weeks. That should only be a boost to their offense, whether it's a large boost like how he used to be back in the day, or just a boost. It should make them better. Having Alvin Kamara, a guy that you could throw out of the backfield and he could run and make plays. He still has some juice left. Maybe not prime Kamara, but it's something that should give them a boost. Their deep game seems to be what their icing on the cake is, and my guy Zach just dropped Quentin Johnson. I ain't gonna pick him up because he needs to be involved a little bit more. But anyway, back to my point about the Saints and their deep shot. Chris Olave, like Derek Carr has shown up in the fourth quarter. With the bomb to Rashid Shaheed, the bomb to Chris Olave, they're closing out games. So even though he's not playing great compared to the fourth quarter, the first three quarters is like, they start off okay, then they go in this little funk, and then he comes in the fourth quarter. Their defense is keeping them in games. I got this one stat that I want to leave us with here, because the Saints are 2-0 despite having scored fewer than 21 points. Back on the Raiders, they were 7-62 when they didn't score 21 or more points. So what does that stat tell me? That Derek Carr never had a legitimate defense, and he does have one here in New Orleans, and he can win games that way. I still like New Orleans to win this division, but I am not buying any further stock on any of these 3 2-0 teams in the South.
So one opinion I had on this NFC South going into the season that I feel pretty good about, that I'm going to reassess here, is I think this division is going to have 2 playoff teams, which is something I don't think anyone was really expecting. And it's funny because with the Saints, like, give them credit, they're 2-0. Again, it's never easy to win a divisional road game. That was a good win last night. Their defense played really well. But there were still some moments in that game where it's like, man, it is really hard for me to trust this team. Derek Carr and his play, that's at the top. And I do think there's an interesting dynamic. Like, how much time does Derek Carr have with his new team? And I know it's only 2 games. It might sound crazy to put him on the clock already, but he didn't play well in week 1. The Saints actually got pretty fortunate that that fumble was ruled not a touchdown and incomplete. I thought that call definitely could have gone in the other direction. Now, Carr did ice the game with the big deep pass to Shaheed, and the chemistry those guys are developing, that looks like it could be a legit thing. But even yesterday, like, Taysom Hill is running the ball down the Panthers' throat repeatedly. And that was, to me, the Saints' most effective offense last night. And on 3rd and 2, they're around, about midfield. They have, I believe it was a 6-point lead at that point. Like, they could really ice the game. I don't even know how Carolina was as competitive as they were yesterday. They throw with Carr on 3rd and 2, and he gets sacked for a loss of 7. And Carolina, they were marching down the field, threatening to tie the game. Unfortunately, they couldn't do that. But the reason I bring this up is I think Jameis Winston is right among the top of backup quarterbacks in the league. And I think yesterday, like, if the Panthers' offense was just a little better and they could have done something against the Saints' defense, New Orleans maybe should have gone to Jameis, because it was clear it was not working with Derek Carr. And I don't trust Dennis Allen. Like, I've seen this guy coach the Raiders. I've seen this guy coach the Saints. He is not a good coach. And as crazy as this might sound, obviously I trust Arthur Smith over him. And I think I might even trust Todd Bowles over him, considering he actually has an offensive coordinator that knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, there's a double-edged sword to that. I'm not really here to compare coaches right now. I think we did that during the offseason when we talked about this division. We know who the best coach is in this division, or we should know. Maybe it is more of a question that we are letting on, but
who do you think it is?
It's definitely Frank Wright to me, but then again, he has a lot to prove too. So I think it's wide open. I would go Frank Wright, but he had that year off. You kind of got to show the world again who you really are.
Yeah, we're not even talking about the Panthers as contenders. So how about out of the 3 2-0 teams?
Out of the 3-0 teams, I would probably have to go with, I think they're unproven. I don't know who to pick. I think they're unproven. Maybe Arthur Smith has more of an identity.
Who do you trust the most?
Nobody. I don't trust none of these coaches here, respectfully. if you really want an honest answer. I think who has more of an identity is Arthur Smith. He has more of an identity. So maybe if you want to use that alone, you can make the argument that he's probably the better coach out the two, coaches here, because he has an identity. We know what he wants to do. I don't know what Dennis Allen wants to do. I don't know what Todd Bowles wants to do. I kind of do, but he wants to play defense and win conservatively and all that. So I kind of get that part, but he's still unproven. Got fired twice, or I think it was twice or maybe once from the New York Jets. But that's how it go. But I think for me, it's a double-edged sword when you talk about the Saints. They haven't played their best, and they're 2-0. The Buccaneers, I think the Buccaneers are benefiting from no expectations. They're benefiting from having nothing to lose. We are about to tank. Like we think we're going somewhere, but we know we're about to tank. I mean, think about the Mike Evans situation. Honestly, I understand because you're winning games, a trade is unlikely at the deadline, but you're going to have him leave if you don't pay him. And they have shown that they are not paying him thus far. So you're going to lose him for nothing. So either way, next year you're going to tank. So the tanking is right here. We might as well just win while we can. So they're in a dangerous spot. And they're dangerous in the sense that they're just playing with nothing to lose. Because it's not like they're going anywhere with Baker Mayfield, anywhere substantial. And tanking is around the corner. Their window is closed. So it's just, all right, the division is up for grabs. Let's go get it. We 2-0, whatever. So they're playing with nothing to lose. And sometimes those are the hardest teams to play, teams with nothing to lose. So that's why I think they're juggling this momentum right now. Now, my last point, I actually got a question for you, Zach, because you boldly predicted that you have two teams coming out of this conference. What do you think is more likely to happen? Real quickly here, rapid fire. Do you think that the NFC West could get 2 or 3 teams out? Or do you think more so the South will definitely get 2 teams?
I think it's a good question. The Rams are a team I'm kind of confused on because it's very hard not to be impressed with Sean McVay and everything that he's done so far to start this season, especially without Cooper Kupp. I don't know if it's just a system or what, but he's, turning Puka Nacua and Tutu Atwell and Kyron Williams into what looks like maybe the best group of skill position players in the league, which is crazy. But to be honest, I don't know if I could give you a confident answer either way. I still believe in Seattle. I still think the NFC West will have at least 2 playoff teams, maybe 3. My main takeaway, my main conclusion with the NFC, though, is the NFC South is not the worst division in the league. It's the NFC North. I don't think the NFC North is getting more than 1 playoff team in. I feel more confident in both the NFC South and the NFC West to produce more playoff teams than the North.
That's a good way to kind of try to rebuttal the question that I had. I think the Vikings will beat anybody here in the South. I think it depends on where you are. And like I said, matchup, schedule. Obviously the Buccaneers beat the Vikings, but I think the Vikings are still a dangerous team. So you could go either way with that. It just comes down to what division you're in, where you're slotted at, and how you take games, take care of games on your schedule. I think potentially the NFC East could get 4 teams out. That's the reason why I asked, is because you think there's 2 coming out of here, but I'm like, I could see a world where 2 to 3 is coming out of the West and 4 is coming out the East. Obviously, all that can't happen. So that's why I asked you the question that I did.
One last point on the South before we move on. I just think, and I know it's easy to say, there are a ton of players we could point to and say, this guy's motivated. This guy has a chip on his shoulder. But man, watching Baker Mayfield the first 2 weeks, I don't think there is a more motivated player in the NFL right now than him. We know how the situation ended in Cleveland, and I think he has to wake up this morning with a smile on his face, sitting at 2-0 right now, especially after watching his former team, the Cleveland Browns, and the way their offense looked last night. Again, the Browns have only won in Pittsburgh once in the last 20 years, and it was a playoff game, and Baker Mayfield was their quarterback for that game. I think the pair of Evans and Godwin is the best pair of receivers he's ever played with. Baker's also had just a crazy amount of offensive coordinators throughout his first 4 years in the league. He's never had one back-to-back years. I think this dude Canales is the real deal. The Buccaneers defense still has some pieces from the team that's made deep playoff runs over the course of the last few years. And this is just a major opportunity for Baker Mayfield. If he doesn't play well here, we could agree he's probably never going to have an opportunity to start in the NFL again. But this is why this opportunity is so big. And so far through 2 weeks, I don't think you could predict that he would have done a better job than how he's played so far.
I mean, look, I could say the same thing about Derek Carr. different coordinators throughout his tenure with the Raiders, different coaches, firing coaches midseason, having interim coaches for a while before they get fired for a new head coach, different systems, bad defenses, as I alluded to before. And he has the best situation now in his career. And I think, the same thing you could argue with Baker Mayfield as well. Desmond Ridder, I mean, say what you want about his talent or lack thereof accuracy. He's a winner as far as his resume thus far. NFL is a different conversation, but so far he brings you a winner's resume from college. So I think, it's a fascinating division in those retrospects. But with the Baker Mayfield situation in particular, there's certain things I know that's going to happen, right? Like, for example, that in great playoff games, you're going to get great quarterback play from great quarterbacks, right? Mahomes going to give you a good game, right? If not a great game. Same thing with, Joe Burrow. You're going to get good games from these guys, right? Certain things is going to happen. The Chiefs probably going to win the division again. But flip that, what quarterback is not going to show up when it matters the most. When you talk about Baker Mayfield, there's one thing I know is for sure, that the Baker Mayfield cycle is a real thing, where he starts off hot. He plays with a chip on his shoulder. You already told me before on air that Baker Mayfield is at his best when he's playing with a chip on his shoulder. Fine, you're 2-0. But if they beat the Eagles and go 3-0, and now they have these crazy expectations, and now there's no more chip on nobody's shoulder because they predicting you to do something, that's where the turnovers happen, and then we die down with this Baker Mayfield hype. So for me, with Baker Mayfield, I've seen it too many times for me to want to see it through before I give him an out and say, oh, they're going to do something spectacular this year, or not even spectacular, but win a division perhaps. Like, I need to see Baker Mayfield, the consistency from him. So, yeah, I think I'm going to hold the brakes here with all of these teams here in the South, but it's a good start to where 3 of these teams are at right now.
Please like and subscribe for all the up-to-date content. You've been slinging shows left and right, slinging content left and right. Please don't miss anything. If you do, like, subscribe, leave a comment, or leave a question, something you may want to answer, something you may have. All ideas are great ideas. Nothing's a dumb question.